We have finally arrived at the end of 2023, and it's been a long and really crazy year. One of the better things to come out of this year is Baldur's Gate. Honkai Star Rail. I'm just kidding. I enjoy both games. So to wrap up this year, I thought I'd make a video to share with all of you who I think were the top 5 Honkai Star Rail characters we got in 2023. Before we discuss that further, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. First off, let me clear up a few things. There's 5 characters on this list and none of them are in any particular order. Number 1 or number 3 doesn't mean anything other than just sequence. This is also by no means a definitive list and shouldn't be viewed as some weird guide that you might use to figure out who you should summon for in reruns. For some of these characters, I might talk about their impact when they were released. For others, I might reference how good they still are, and for the rest, it might just be personal bias. So don't take this too seriously, there's no right or wrong here, and it's just my personal opinion. With the obligatory disclaimers out of the way, let's start with the first 5-star I got when I lost my first ever 50-50, Brona. In a gacha game, character longevity is something that is not that common because it's normal for characters, especially new ones, to replace the older characters. That's what power creep is. Brona, however, is an exception to that rule. She is one of the 7 standard characters and has been available since the release of the game. Despite that, she has remained one of the best support characters you can get in Star Rail. In fact, she's so good that when Star Rail first launched, Brona was unequivocally the character every content creator suggested you reroll for. A few months down the line and Brona is still an absolute beast. But why, I hear you ask? I'm sure most of you already know, but I'm gonna tell you anyways. You see, Star Rail is a turn-based game, and each character gets one turn to take an action, be it healing and buffing their team or attacking the enemies. Brona, with the use of her skill, can just outright ignore this limitation. On her own turn, she can give one of your other characters an additional move by moving them up the queue, which functionally means your DPS gets another chance to attack and your healer gets another chance to heal. Skills that just ignore the rules of the game tend to be pretty broken and why Brona is still good even today. Right now, there isn't another character who can do this, and I can't imagine one being created that would power creep Brona. Would it mean giving 2 turns instead of 1? Only time will tell. But until then, I feel that Brona earns her spot on this list for being extremely relevant even after many other characters have been released to the roster. That's not even speaking about her buff from her ult and technique. Next up, we have another Harmony character because you can never have too many buffers. The difference is that this character is a 4-star, which I felt compelled to include so that this list isn't filled with just 5-star limited characters. But I think she still holds her own. At number 2, we have Tingyun, the Foxian Power Bank. While Brona is one of the strongest supports in the game due to her turn-giving mechanic, Tingyun is an affordable character that just keeps on giving. Tingyun's skill is pretty simple and straightforward. It's a damage buff. It buffs attack based on a percentage of her own attack. On its own, it's not particularly crazy, but because it lasts a total of 3 of Tingyun's own turns, it makes her a pretty SP positive character. But this isn't why she's on the list. Tingyun's ult is where a bulk of her value is hidden. You see, Tingyun is one of 2 characters who is able to give your allies energy. The only other character who can do this is Huo Huo, who is a limited 5-star character. Ultimates in this game are exceptionally strong. In fact, we are now seeing characters designed around their ults like Argenti. So if you want to use more of them, Tingyun is the only character right now that can help you with that. Tingyun's ult not only gives you a whopping 50 energy, but also another attack buff on top of it. Since her release, Tingyun's stock has only ever increased, with characters like Imbibitor Lune, Jinglu, and Argenti all needing either SP positive characters or ult charge. So suffice to say, despite her being just a 4-star, she's currently a very valuable 4-star to have, and I often have her in whatever team that doesn't have Brona. Her unique utility despite being a 4-star is why I feel she deserves a spot here. At the current state of the game, we currently have a total of 5 healers, and entry number 3 is one of those characters. The healer archetype isn't a particularly sexy one. They just top off lost HP and that's it. There's no flashy animations or high numbers or anything, but they are still crucial to the team nonetheless. Most of the healers we had at launch were one-click types. You clicked on their heals and they healed. Luocha changed all of that. He was the first healer we got, without constellations, that had an automatic smart heal, an AoE auto heal, and even a cleanse built in. Because most of his heals were passively activating, it also meant he shares a trait with Tingyun in that he is also very SP positive. Essentially, without doing much actively, he was covering a lot of different roles and utility for any team he is put in. On top of that, his ultimate is an AoE attack that debuffs all enemies hit. It's the only AoE buff remover we currently have in the game. All of this combines to make Luoxia an extremely valuable character just because of all the utility he brings with him. When he first released, I was a bit skeptical given his reliance on teammates attacking to trigger his heal and that he was scaling based off attack. But ever since getting him, he hasn't left my team, especially those that require more SP, like with Imbibitor Lunae. This is why I placed Luoxia at number 3. So far on this list, I've only been talking about healers and buffers. What gives, right? Where are the DPS? Well, I had a hard time deciding, to be honest, because there's so many I liked, but at number 4, I think I'm happy to place Jinglu here. DPS characters are often pretty straightforward in games like this, and most are pretty close to each other with it being just a numbers game. The reason why I think Jinglu is one of the better DPS is not because of the damage she can do, which is tremendous, but rather it's her ramp up. Jinglu needs very little to be able to hit the higher end of her damage range. By using her skill just twice, you enter a mode that gives you an advanced action forward, which is essentially an added turn, 50% crit rate, an enhanced attack that hits multiple enemies, and an attack buff. All of that by just using her skill twice. That's not inclusive of any other buffs she might get from any other party members either. On top of that, her ultimate even extends that mode by an additional turn. If you happen to pair her with another character on this list, Brona, Jinglu can essentially enter this mode in a single turn. This means she can pull off a total of 4 attacks in quick succession with 2 skill users, an ultimate, and an enhanced attack. There are a ton of other really strong DPS, but Jinglu is really easy to use, and any player new or old that has her will immediately benefit from her kit and insane numbers with comparatively lower investment, and why she's number 4 on this list. Finally, we have reached number 5, which surprisingly is a character I don't even have and regret it every day. This character is Fushan, the head of the Divination Commission and overall super tank. As a person who has and continues to use Jeopard, putting Fushan on this list was a bit tough as I wanted to give the spot to Jeopard, clearly a biased choice. But Fushan does so much in her kit that I feel she edges him out by a bit. It's not to say Jeopard is bad or anything, but Fushan just has more utility. With her skill alone, she mitigates a lot of damage, increases everyone's HP and crit rate, and most importantly, makes everyone functionally immune to crowd control. She essentially makes it so that your team can just ignore crowd control effects, which is a huge buff to characters like Jingyuan. On top of this, Fushan is functionally immortal. With the charge she gains from ulting, the minute she reaches a certain HP threshold, Fushan can just heal herself back up. Now in prolonged fights without a healer, and if there's a lot of burst damage like Fentilia's boss fight, Fushan may not be able to last indefinitely. But for 90% of all other things, she makes fights far more comfortable, and why I think for now, she's one of the better characters in the overall rosters, especially if we're talking about a tank. Before I end this video, I'd also like to include some honorable mentions as I feel these characters were pretty close to getting a spot on this list. First is Silverwolf, who is the only character right now who can add weaknesses to enemy teams. Her defense, shred, and weakness debuff makes her an extremely valuable character that can cover for a lot of gaps your DPS might have in terms of elements. When I first started playing this game and didn't have too many characters built, she was a godsend. Second honorable mention goes to Huo Huo, a healer who can AoE heal, give characters energy, and has a passive cleanse, making her kit have elements of Luoxia, Tingyun, and Fushan's kits, all 3 of whom are on this list. It was a tough choice choosing between Huo Huo and Luoxia, but Luoxia had a bigger impact for me personally when I first got him, so I'm a bit more biased towards him. That said, Huo Huo is a very close contender to dethrone him, so don't go thinking she's bad. Plus, Tail is just awesome. And finally, for DPS, I want to mention Imbibitor Lunae, who was our very first taste of how strong destruction characters can be. In fact, he was so overtuned that the Pridewind side had to rework their tier list specifically because of him. He's exceptionally strong, though takes a bit more thought to use because of his high SP requirement and why I settled on Jinglu instead. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this list is not an end-all be-all. There's a lot of personal bias here, and truthfully, there isn't a character that is inherently bad in the game. Each of them has places or content where they shine, so don't take this as an indication you should stop playing your favorite character just because they don't appear here. Let me know in the comments who are your personal top 5 characters of 2023. If you enjoyed the video, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and also thanks for a great year. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to all of you, and as usual, have a nice day.